We're here to bring a new type of news show.
New insight, new styles, and new topics every day.
We are News Generation.
Bringing news just for you is Monday, September 22nd here in Seoul. I'm Isujin, and this is News Generation. Joining today is Ki.
Happy Monday!
Happy Monday! And also Grace is with us.
Great to be here.
To have you. And both are here to speak on behalf of people in their 20s and 30s. So it's Monday, which means we're kicking off another work week. And as we head into the office or schools, it's not just coffee that's on people's minds, it's probably money. For a lot of young people today, the conversation around money goes beyond just saving your monthly salary. And that's why one of the biggest buzzwords right now is investment, especially in the stock markets. So to get things started, how are you managing and investing your money, Ki?
Well, for your opening, you said people think about money, and that is so true because that's the only reason I'm here. Just kidding. Well, I honestly have a hard time making everyday life, but I'm not good at investing or revolving money. Not a big portion, but a small amount I take goes into stocks, and both in the States and Korea. I also have some funds. I invest like $100 or $200 every month, and I have an entrusted fund manager to run them. And there's also an app that helps me invest in stocks. Instead of buying a whole single stock at a time, I buy $10 to $20 worth of a certain company's stock every week. So it'd be 1/5 or even 1/10 of a single stock. But after a couple of months, you'd be owning a whole single stock. It doesn't give you too much of a burden. I do this for some American companies because their stock price is just so expensive to buy a whole sum at once.
So I feel like you do quite a bit of investment. Do you have any advice for people, like a low pressure way to start investing?
Don't start with a big amount. And then always do with some money that you can spare. Try it out first, and then if you get sort of a strategy, when you can get technical, that's when you start come in with a bigger money.
I think this is really sound advice. What about you, Grace?
Well, I'm definitely not an investment expert, but a few years ago, I heard once the phrase, cash is trash, referring to how just storing away your cash is not an effective hedge against inflation. So I realized that maybe investing would be a smarter financial choice rather than just saving my monthly salary. And while I don't have a lot of seed money to make these grandiose investments, I do take a portion of my earnings and put them towards some major stocks, which has generated some profit over the years. And this in turn makes investing just more fun for me. And right now I'm only invested in American stocks, but I have noticed that the KOSPI has been doing really well, reaching record highs.
So like you said, Grace, with the KOSPI hitting record highs, interest in stock investment is higher than ever. So let's take a look at the screen to learn more.
With the prices of almost everything from groceries to housing continuing to soar with no real signs of slowing down, young people are turning to investment more than ever before. Many are joining online communities and streaming financial content to pick up tips on where and how to grow their money. And with the KOSPI recently reaching all-time highs, paired with the new administration pledge to boost the stock market, interest in investing is only getting stronger. Today on News Generation, we're diving into the rise of the KOSPI, the investment habits of millennials and Gen Z, and why we're seeing a full-on investment boom among young people in Korea.
So as we just saw in the video, the KOSPI has been performing strongly, reaching new highs and grabbing a lot of attention from investors. After months of volatility, the index has climbed to record levels, fueled by a mix of factors that we'll be getting into today. So what exactly has the KOSPI been looking like lately, and what's driving this surge, Ki?
Well, since crossing the 3,000 mark back in June, the KOSPI has been setting fresh record highs days after days. Last Friday, September 19th, KOSPI closed at 3,467.89 points. Today, as of 22nd of September 2025, KOSPI started at 3,463.84, up 18.60 points from the week before. Tech-heavy Kosdaq also started 5.95 points higher with 869.06 points. So what's fueling this momentum is that both investors and institutions have been net buyers driving the rally forward. And many point to the strong commitment expressed by President Lee Jae-myung during his 100-day press conference on the 11th, where he underlined his determination to revitalize the stock market, and that message seems to have given investors an extra boost of that confidence.
So it's clear that both domestic and foreign investors are responding positively to the administration's signals, and the market seems to be gaining momentum like we haven't seen in years. So what exactly did President Lee emphasize regarding the stock market, and how might that shape investment trends for the rest of the year, Grace?
Well, President Lee Jae-myung emphasized that revitalizing the stock market is a core element of the new administration's economic and industrial policies, and stated that Korean citizens should be provided with new investment opportunities beyond real estate. For some time now, real estate in the Korean market has been considered the surefire way to generate profit and is highly desired by almost everyone. It's always the hottest topic in conversations regarding investment, but now we're seeing that the recent KOSPI figures are boosting investor sentiment as more people are allocating their funds toward the Korean stock market. Industry experts now predict that the KOSPI will reach a new high by the end of this year.
So like you said, a lot of people are interested in the Korean stock market. So are there any industries that you'd personally be interested in investing in?
Well, for one, I know that I'm going to have to be studying what I'm going to be investing in. So for me, I'm more comfortable just with the bigger companies, just because I feel like they're easier to get more information on, and they're a little bit more stable than like the smaller, the up-and-coming companies.
Yeah, it's a safe way to invest.
Yeah.
So it makes sense that the administration's strong push is giving investors confidence, and experts are optimistic that the market could keep booming. So this is expected to further fuel interest in stocks, but haven't many millennials and Gen Zs already been investing for some time now?
Sure. Surprisingly, according to some survey conducted last year, about 35% of Koreans said they have invested in stocks. Nearly half the people in their 30s, 49%, are active investors, and that's 1 out of every 2. And what's more, investors in their 20s and younger have surged, jumping 3.6 times over the past 5 years. So if you take a look at the screen now, the number of shareholders under 30, that means mainly those who are in 20s or even younger, we only had 380,000 investors back in 2019. Whereas looking at last year 2024, we saw 1.38 million young shareholders, seeing 3.6 times increase within 5 years.
Wow, so those figures really show how actively young people are participating in the stock market. So nearly half of those in their 30s are investing, and the number of investors under 20 has skyrocketed in the past 5 years. So are young people focusing only on stocks, or are they exploring other types of investment as well, Grace?
Well, it seems like millennials and Gen Z are interested not only in investing in stocks, but also real estate, like I mentioned, as well as cryptocurrency. Recently, they've been growing their investments in foreign exchange as well, taking advantage of the exchange rates. And they've also been buying gold, which are hitting record highs. With the intensifying investment craze, we're witnessing more cases of young investors borrowing excessively so that they have more seed money to invest in stocks and crypto. This, of course, has consequences, leading more people to accumulate mountains of debt, which is increasingly becoming a social problem. In fact, half of those filing for bankruptcy are in their 20s and 30s.
So this really highlights both the opportunities and the risks young people are exploring a wide range of investment, but it also shows how financial pressure can become a serious social issue. So what's driving this surge of interest in investing among millennials and Gen Zs in recent years, Keen?
Well, these days, for financial management of the MZ generation has practically turned into what I call, or might call it, a means of surviving. So for many in their 20s and 30s, finding quality jobs, meaning paying a lot of money, isn't easy, and they don't feel they can rely on the national pension, which is often viewed as running on borrowed time. And that leaves investments like stocks as virtually their only pathway to grow assets. And while some young people do take on high risk and high return stages, so-called B2 or debt investing, or what we call youngul, having all the assets possible, analysts point out that the 2030 generation leans toward holding blue chip stocks for the long term, aiming for steady growth rather than quick risky gain. In other words, behind the headlines of aggressive speculation, there's also a generation quietly building a stable future, just like what I'm doing nowadays.
Do you kind of remember how old you were when you first started investing?
Well, I started when I was 21 or 22, so I'm not going to tell how long it was. Then I started quite young because I started making money a long time ago. But then I was getting some false information from my seniors or people I was working with. So you have to make sure the fact you're having is, as a matter of fact, it's fact.
It's also a learning curve as well.
Right.
So it's clear that investing has become more than just a way to make extra money. It's now a key part of financial survival for many young people. And that explains why we see such a wide range of strategies. Some take bigger risks, while many prefer steady long-term investments to secure their future. So with that in mind, why are so many young Koreans choosing stocks and crypto over more traditional paths like saving in a bank or buying a home, Grace?
Our generation, and I can vouch for this, has experienced the difficulties of purchasing a home solely based on our earned income, like through jobs. And with such low interest rates these days, putting our hard-earned cash in the bank, like in the past, is not enough to be an effective hedge against inflation. So it just makes more sense to put that toward things like stocks and crypto. We want to be smart with our money and would rather opt to invest in things that would make us more profit in the long run. And according to a survey, it was found that millennials and Gen Z chose real estate as the most promising investment option. But for those lacking seed money, stocks and crypto are the easier, more accessible options.
So for you personally, if you had some extra money to invest in, which area would you be interested in investing in?
I would be interested in investing in real estate just because it's not a part of my portfolio right now, and I do want to get started in real estate. It's just a matter of, like I mentioned, it's just not enough seed money to invest in real estate at the moment.
I think it's also important, like you said, because you've already invested in stocks before, to kind of diversify your portfolio.
Exactly.
So to find out more, we're going to talk to an economic expert about current trends in investing in the financial outlook for young people. And that conversation will take place right after the break, so don't go anywhere.
NewsGen wants to hear from you. Go to YouTube and search out Channel Arirang News. Click Posts and cast your vote in the poll. Make a new type of news with us.
So we're joined today by Professor Shin Se-dong, a professor of business economics at Sookmyung Women's University. Hi, Professor, you're currently on the line with us. So thank you so much for connecting with us today.
Morning.
Good morning. So how do the investment habits of millennials and Gen Z in Korea differ from those of older generations?
Well, for the older generation, like Generation X or baby boomers, they are pretty risk averse in the sense that they really hate to take risk because most of them have been born when their families were pretty poor. But unlike those, Generation X or baby boomers, millennium generation or Generation Z, they were born relatively affluent families, so they are pretty much like unlike Generation X, they pretty much like risk. So fundamentally, whether they are risk averse, like Generation X or below, or millennium generation or Generation Z, they are pretty risk lover. I think that is fundamental economic difference between the two groups of generations.
Thank you for your insights between those two groups. Professor, so what are the investment trends among young people overseas and how do they compare to Korea?
Very, very much different because, the younger generation overseas, they are not quite different from their, older generation. But the Korean generation, like Generation Y or Generation Z, there's a specific kind of very peculiar kind of a difference between the older generation and the younger generation. So you cannot find very much difference in the investment behavior of, the Generation X or Generation Y or Generation Z in foreign country. But in Korea, you can see a specific difference between Generation X and Generation Z. That I think is because Korean economy has been developed so fast and so rapid over the last, I think, 30 years.
Professor Shin, then, what should young investors keep in mind when managing their finances? Are there any particular risks or precautions that they should be aware of?
As I said, just Generation Z, especially Generation Y and Z, they are pretty much risk lover. They don't think pretty much of the risk. And so another peculiar thing is they like to borrow. We call it leverage. They want to borrow money at a relatively low interest rate, and then expect a very high rate of return in the bitcoins or in the stock market, etc. So one of the most concerning factor for me to investment by the Generation Y and Generation G, they are prone to potential fluctuation in interest rates and fluctuation in the stock prices, even fluctuation in housing prices. So I think they have to be very careful and mindful about potential fluctuation in the prices of assets.
All right, thank you so much for sharing your insight with us today, Professor.
Thank you.
So we just spoke with an economic expert about the investment habits of young Koreans, how they compare to their peers overseas, and what to watch out for when we manage our money. But of course, investing isn't without its risks. So what are some of the things young people should be careful about when they get too caught up in investing?
Sure. Because I dress up like I look like an expert today, but I'm not. Something too much is something you have to avoid, of course. Make sure investing wouldn't turn into an addiction. It's important not to get too carried away when people borrow money to invest and take on risks they really can't handle. The psychological pressure becomes unavoidable, and investments that leave you with any kind of constant anxiety, that's not the right path forward. So when I do stocks, I just leave them and not think about it. Hopefully eventually it's going to grow, but not to argue. It almost seems pathetic when someone constantly looks at their smartphones almost every 5 minutes to check how their stock is doing. So let's just leave it at that moment.
Right, I think it's good advice, although it's kind of hard sometimes to not do that. So even though people often focus on making or losing money, what's less talked about is the mental and emotional toll that risky investing can take on young people. So Grace, what kind of broader social impacts are we seeing from this trend?
The rise in bankruptcies among young people due to debt is not just a personal problem anymore. It also leads to increased social and economic costs for a country. For one, when there is a widespread increase in bankruptcies, it often reflects a larger economic problem like a recession. This causes consumers and businesses to reduce spending and lending, which can further stifle the economy. It also tightens credit conditions because a high rate of bankruptcy can make lenders more cautious, leading them to increase interest rates and tighten lending standards for everyone. And this can make it harder and more expensive for both consumers and businesses to borrow money, slowing down economic growth.
So we've covered a lot of different angles today, from the rise of investing among young people to the risk and even the social costs that are involved. So to finish off our discussion today, so what's the most important thing people should keep in mind when they invest, Key?
Well, this is what I hear from my seniors or elderly all the time. You should only invest with money you can spare. As though you wouldn't be too sad even if you lose all that money. It's not going to affect your life. That's the most important thing. And investments sometimes can be seen as a legal gamble. It shouldn't turn into an addiction, and it shouldn't hurt you. But as many say, just saving your income would not be enough. Saving interest is not as high as 30 years ago, like the professor was saying, in Generation X or even before. So we should look for a wiser way to invest your money, check all your available resources, and carefully check all the information and facts.
I think this is really important. So what about you, Grace? Do you have any advice?
You know, I do think that it's great that young people like us are trying to be smart with our money, and it's important to know how to invest that money wisely. And this is probably what all investment experts say, but I would recommend diversifying your investments. Put a certain amount in savings, buy some gold, put some in stocks, and some in crypto if that is also a part of your investment portfolio. And remember, investing is not the same as gambling. Don't go into it blindly, so you need to educate yourself on what you're buying and also be aware of the risks involved, like the possibility of losing your principal amount in the worst case scenario.
Do you have any safety tips that you personally have in time?
Well, for me, just to keep my self-control, I guess, I set a goal for how much profit I want to sell by. So let's say that if I have a 10% profit, I won't wait I won't like be curious about, oh, but what if this goes up a little bit further? I'll just sell at 10%.
I think it's so hard to know with the timing. But I guess like Ki said, you said, it's important to have patience, right?
That's true, and then just like you said, I always set a limit of how much I'm going to invest. Unlike a paid salary worker, I am a freelancer, so I have no idea how much money I'm going to be making each year, right? So I try to balance that out first, and then that's why I have a small amount invest every now and then, and also like she said. We reach a certain point, you just have to sell it right away. Otherwise, you're not going to make a lot of money. You're going to be losing it. So that set of rule is very important when you're investing something.
I think these are all really sound advices. So with the KOSPI climbing and financial trends shifting, you'll be hearing more about investing in the months to come. But at the end of the day, whether it's stocks, crypto, or real estate, there's no one-size-fits-all path to wealth. And the challenge and the responsibility lies in finding the right investment approach for you, one that helps you grow without pushing you beyond what you can handle. And this brings us to the end of today's episode of News Generation. But News Gen will be back tomorrow at 10:30 a.m. Korea time. A big thanks to Ki.
Thank you
For coming in. Also, Grace.
Thanks for having me.
And to all our viewers, thank you so much for watching. And we hope you have the best day. We are
News Generation.